we want to not accept emotions instead of realizing that by accepting them, by naming them, we don't agree with them, we're just accepting them. And accepted emotions actually diminish. Whereas when you deny emotions and say, stop crying, or, oh, you're okay, when a child falls down, that we're actually stopping the very mechanism that helps people be what you are talking about, self-regulating. Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify, access, and control your own emotions, and to recognize, understand, and consider the emotions of others. So if you don't know what emotions you're feeling, how do you access them?
Welcome to The Body Never Lies. I'm your host, Leela Lutz. Each week, myself and experts from around the world help you uncover the secret ways your body communicates with you to empower you in your own individual health journey. Now, if you guys have been listening to the show for a while, you might have noticed that pretty much all of the guests, if not, pretty much all of them, have made a reference to parenting and how important the way we parent is to foster children who are independent and can take care of themselves, be authentic, and be in touch with their own emotions so they can thrive and do this whole self-care journey and take care of their own health. So I couldn't do a Foundations of Health series without having my parenting guru on so we could actually put into practice what all the other guests are saying. How do we teach our kids to be authentic, self-nurturing, self-loving, and emotionally aware? Well, Ferne van Zyl's passion is working with young children and fostering independent children. Hence, her business is called The Independent Child. Now, while she was bringing up 4 of her own children, she fostered children from disadvantaged backgrounds, I think 7 in total, ran a home-based family daycare and facilitated programs for babies and toddlers at church before she even became a Montessori educator. Then as a Montessori educator for over a decade, she owned and operated a Montessori-based learning centre for babies and toddlers on Sydney's North Shore. Now she works internationally, consulting families around the world, and she also has mentored and coached and trained many other Montessori educators. Now, you don't have to be a fan of Montessori to love this podcast. Ferne is a Montessori educator, but her parenting tips are so practical that you can apply them to any family. And I think the key thing about Montessori is the motto of Montessori is help me to do it myself. And the premise behind Montessori is that we create an environment where children can do things for themselves and be intrinsically motivated. So I hope you enjoy the show. Good morning, Ferne. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on The Body Never Lies. I'm so excited to have you here because we have talked so much in all our other interviews about parenting, really, and childhood, and the importance of parenting ourselves and the importance of the way that we parent our children going forward so that they can be vulnerable, so that they can regulate their own emotions, so they can make good choices for their health. And so I had to have you on today to say, okay, Ferne, how do we do this? Because most of us are going, oh my God, I didn't get that in my childhood. So how do we do it? Because it can't just be a rejection of what our parents did and doing the opposite. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. But I really wanted to talk to you today about how do we raise children who are independent and can be in touch with their emotions and can say, oh, wow, this is not working in my life. So what I need to do is X, Y, and Z, rather than go for the latest exercise craze, distract with work, make more stress so I don't have to deal with any of this emotion. So I guess first thing I want to ask you, Ferne, is what is, your business is called The Independent Child. What is an independent child?
Okay. Well, for me, independence, the reason we went with that is because being a Montessori educator for that long and being in the classroom, with parents and with children, realizing that, there was a lot of dependence going on for both parent and child, really. And I loved the picture. I read a story about an eagle and how the eagle mother actually takes their baby up to a really, really high nest. And when it's time to learn to fly, they literally hit them over the edge and then follow. But there's nothing they can do other than fly below to watch them struggle. And I think, this is the sense of independence is when you look at the meaning of it, it says self-regulating, self-controlled, out of the influence of the control of others, and the support of others. So in order to learn that, you have to be given freedom to be yourself instead of control to become something. And so it starts from really little that, as parents, we start controlling, what we don't like and what we do like, and what we have an idea of what our children should be instead of observing them and giving them the freedom to be themselves, separate from us. So I love the word autonomy, and I usually give both when I think about independence as, someone is self-regulating, self-governing, inner-directed. And how do you become that? But by giving chance to explore and the world at your own pace, I'm separate from others. It means separate from others. So you're taking personal responsibility for your life and not blaming others. So independence for me is also coming to the place where you don't blame your parents for the way you turn out.
Yeah, that's an important one, isn't it?
Yes, because, no parents are perfect, and we're not doing a perfect job either. So we have to take we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's about taking responsibility that even in growing up, your choices affected who you became, not just what your parents did to you. Right from little. I know I was in my 30s when I stopped kind of, if mom had been this and if mom had been that and if mom had been the other thing. And apologize.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's important. It's a very important journey, this self-realization, and very much something that I work with in coaching people is that, this concept of mother and father ideals, they're archetypally ideal. They're not reality, so a lot of us can spend a life looking for a mother or father that we never had because we want this movie kind of mother or father, but our parents are just normal people like us with problems and, their own stories with their parents and their own negative beliefs and life issues and relationship issues and stress. They're just normal people doing the best that they can. So I think what's really important is for us as adults wanting to do better is we need to actually look at our own childhood and go, well, you know what? I'm a grown up now and I take responsibility for myself and the perception that I have on my childhood. And obviously there's varying degrees, right? There's abusive childhoods. There's just, my mum worked and she was never there. There's varying degrees of loss and trauma and what you missed out on. But no matter what it is, the only way we can move forward is working through that with coaching or therapy or, taking responsibility for that and then paying it forward, I guess, into the next generation.
Yeah, definitely. And, the fact that we're here means that we were nurtured.
Yeah.
To the degree, most of us grow through the difficult parts of our childhood more than we grew through anything that was easy, if you think of it. The fact that if you've moved a lot, you learn emotional resilience through being able to adapt and change and build new relationships and things that, somebody who stayed in their same house for their whole 20 years or 25 years before they left home, has that fear of starting over and starting again and things. So yeah, I think it just comes back to whatever you had, embrace everything that was good, and don't, as who you are as a unique human being, and then, be prepared to have a life of learning, and so that you can change when you need to.
So how do we start giving our children independence? When does it start? Is it first?
The first independence is birth.
When the child leaves.
Right. As soon as that baby comes out, as soon as we come out of our mother, we've been totally dependent for every single thing. And we have to breathe on our own. So I love that it's a journey of little independences. It's not something that you just arrive at, through nothing. It's your experiences and your relationship with those first primary carers that are going to lay the foundation. We talk a lot about the first 3 years laying the foundation for all future development. So for independence, for socialization, for mental health, for emotional resilience, all of those things, the foundation is laid in that first nurturing relationship we have with adults. And that's why it's such a crucial time to be aware of that dynamic ourselves with our little children, that they are separate from us. It's a degree of separation continually from that time, and we have to prepare ourselves for it as much as we prepare them for it. Because that's where the troubles come in, is when we are emotionally dependent on our child for certain things where we should be getting that nurture elsewhere, and vice versa.
That's a hard thing as a mother, isn't it? Because especially for mums, if you've carried the child, nurtured the child, delivered the child, spent months breastfeeding the child, and so really, I never thought about, before I had my own child, I always thought, you just carry on with your life and I'm just going to be this woman that does, and that doesn't happen. So, I can really understand how a lot of people get attached and find it hard to break that attachment. Talk to us about that. What is a healthy, because we've gone through this thing of now it's all about attachment parenting and, little cringe there. I mean, wow, what's happened with Shanti and I is Shanti's very independent. It's just her personality. And so she has always made the decisions on when she's going to stop breastfeeding. She just walked off and was like, that's it, I'm done. She's very independent. She went to preschool yesterday. I dropped her off for stage 1 orientation yesterday, and she didn't even say goodbye to me. She just walked through the door. So it's going to depend on the personality of your child, right? But also the personality of your parent. I'm a very independent person. So talk to us about attachment. The attachment parenting is, I feel like it's almost gone the complete opposite way of what our parents did. I don't know, and I'm not going to say that I know a lot about attachment parenting, but let's talk a little bit about that.
And I suppose if somebody would ask me, do I believe in attachment parenting? Yes, we do need to be attached to our children healthily through every stage of their development, because they're always going to need us, but how they need us changes. And we need, again, that preparation, that emotional preparation, because, as you say, we have carried them for 9 months and then give birth to them in labor, and then we feel totally, especially depending on what our life was before that, we feel like we often fill everything in our life with our children. We have to, you have to sacrifice that first year. You have to put yourself on hold. There's no way you nurture and get all the same time that you used to sit and read a book or go and exercise or, have a dinner that lasts for 3 hours, because you're constantly on call, right? And then it's important that we realize that the second year needs less of that, and the third year needs less of that, and the fourth year needs less of that, because if you think of it, I mean, Maria Montessori said that a child is a person of their place and time by the time they are 3, and all they have to do is grow in stature. So we've got this very short period where they are totally within our sphere of influence without little influence from out there. So it is important that they, the home is always going to be the most important thing. We all look back to our home and the way it was or wasn't to get our bearing in life.
We do, don't we?
Whether it, to whatever degree it met our needs or didn't, it is our frame of reference, and that's why I think we should really, I suppose, be grateful for it, whatever it was. And the first, watching little children, they are so capable. When you spend a lot of time with babies and toddlers, they are so responsive to relationship right from the beginning. That is what they're calling out for right from the beginning, is relationship. The sound of a human voice is what they turn to. They don't respond to animal voices. They don't respond to the barks and the meows and that. They respond to a human voice. So, the key is, I think, learning to be observers. I think we are observers as mothers, especially, but to actually do it much more objectively is healthy. I think I've mentioned to you before that having fostered children, and that you do become more self-aware of how subjective you are with children who came out of you compared to other people's children, in terms of, I don't want them to turn out like this, I don't want them to turn out like that. And that kind of guides how we're parenting them. Whereas, you accept other children for who they are, and you much more, I need to get to know this child.
What do you think that comes from? Is that because we feel like our identity is in the child? This child is an extension of me. And if you're, it's very old, some cultures and some generations, I want my child to be a doctor or a lawyer or, and that's the purpose. There's...
It is very interesting, why people, it is an inborn desire to continue,
Yeah.
And most people do have that desire to have children based on maybe very selfish needs. To explore the reasons why we have children is a whole other subject, I suppose. But we do see them as an extension of ourselves, I think. Many, you'll hear a lot of people saying, they're living out their dreams through their children now because their dreams weren't accomplished. They weren't allowed to play tennis when they were growing up. So now they buy the child a tennis racket at 18 months, and put them on the, So there is that sense, which is unfortunate in us, that we are trying to get our worth through what our children now achieve.
And it also comes back to it, doesn't it, like with Dr. Shefali, who talks about my child. The illusion is that this is my child, my daughter, my belongs to me. And this is an illusion because the child never belongs to us in the first place. She talks about that, hey?
Yeah. We, from I suppose, a biblical sense, or a sense that everybody is worth something, self-worth is really important. And the fact that, children are lent to you. They don't belong to you. They lent to you for a season. That is the season where they're totally dependent on you is very short, really, in comparison to their whole life journey. And we were just talking about even adult children, you've got to learn to let go and not have that sense of, why have they become like that? why do they dress like that? Why do they wear their hair like that? As if somehow you should have dictated what kind of hairstyle they like. And I hear a lot of parents, talking about their children still as, he's like this and he's like that and he needs this and he needs that, and you think, well, really? Do you know that?
What's this sense? It is that sense of knowing, isn't it? Like you should know what's best for your child.
Yeah, but do we? Especially, don't we? So that's where I think that whole thing right from the beginning, are we growing up children who are free to be them and I'm nurturing what they're supposed to become, not what I think they should become? It's a subtle change. It's a subtle change. It's just like, it's the subtle change of thinking that they don't belong to me, they lent to me. If something's lent to you, you usually are much more careful with it.
That's so true. So true.
I never thought of that before, but when you borrow something, you actually make sure nothing happens to it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you think it's yours, you think, I can do what I want. And maybe that's the change.
Such an interesting concept. So I was very interested in Montessori, and when we mentioned that Ferne's a Montessori educator, and this talk is not to convince you to turn to the Montessori method.
No.
What attracted me to it was because of my background in movement and understanding the importance of brain development in movement, and also movement being our first way of communication before we have language. So that's the first place to me where self-regulation starts and autonomy, but also understanding the mind-brain connection. And then also, of course, because I work so much with adults in the rehab space and we take them back to infant development patterns for the rehabilitation journey, understanding the importance of proper infant development in terms of movement for the body, the bones and the structure and all of the function and that. So that's what drew me to Montessori. And that's how the Montessori environment is set up. Let's just talk about that. I think is the first place to start, because it's really interesting because most of us, and this is still a concept obviously to a lot of people that's bizarre, because I'm still seeing on social media kids in jolly jumpers and kids in those walker things. If everyone has a jolly jumper, please throw it out. Please throw it out. Like, Ferne can talk about it from a development perspective, but I can talk about it from what is happening to your spine, bouncing and crushing itself, and the hip joints that haven't been formed properly. So from a movement perspective, please throw it out. But
you've just, my passion, movement from movement equals learning. Movement equals learning right from the beginning. The more we restrict movement, the more we restrict brain development. And maybe this is what drew us to each other, because, I made a movie of my granddaughter's, my first grandchild's first year. We videoed her every week. And so it's, autonomy is all about what the parent is prepared not to do for their child.
That's such an interesting way to put it, and it's so true, actually.
What are you prepared not to do to help them, to allow them to struggle? Because learning happens in struggle. Like every time your child is crawling around and you prevent them from getting to the edge of the step, so they can't even look to see that it's dangerous or that they need to retract from it, you are making them dependent on you to learn about the world, instead of giving them knowledge about where they can go and what their limitations are. So I love the crawling one and the step one, because it really illustrates to parents how we try and save them from difficulty, and then expect them to have emotional resilience in difficulty.
Yeah, that's right. And people don't realise that's the foundation, right? And it's the same thing with boredom, I guess, right? Because we're always like, even when my girl couldn't move, if people bring these toys that are so colourful and are mobile with 20 million things on it, and, it's like, I feel like it's, oh my God, what happens if the child gets bored?
Yes. So we're overstimulating them. somebody's just made the little kicking ball for my granddaughter, who's only 4 weeks old. And so we've been taking pictures of her this week at 4 weeks, just looking at the ball. And you see, most parents are really motivated to move it and jangle it and, actually overstimulate, thinking that that is what relationship is. Whereas really, if you sit and watch a 4-week-old discover the ball, it's a totally different experience. Yeah. Where you don't even draw their attention to the ball. You just hang it at an angle where they would notice it as soon as they get it in their right, because children have peripheral vision. If you put it at 45 degrees and 30 centimeters away, just like the breast is from their mum's face, they will start to focus on it. And then the wind might move it very slowly, so they get a different angle. And so eye tracking can begin really young if given objects that move slowly. Whereas most of the mobiles, as you say, they've got they're very colourful. They have too many objects. They often have music attached to them, so they're distracting from the actual object that the child's looking at. So, right from the start, we start overstimulating them and actually stopping them from concentrating. Meanwhile, concentration is the thing we want to develop.
It's very interesting when you think about what Dr. Christy Goodwin and I are talking about. We have this obsession with devices and, we're so overstimulated as adults. And that place of boredom, she talked about, if we don't get bored, we have no idea who we are. And we are so overstimulated, but that we're pushing that onto our children as well. You're like, oh, he's just lying there. I better get him a toy. Or, oh, he made a noise. I better get that rattle that he can't reach. And, this is where it starts.
Yes.
And I guess it would be very challenging. Like, it is challenging, even for me who's conscious of these things, to sometimes just sit and watch and be present when you're normally in this world of like, okay, I've got to do. I've got to get the shopping. I've got to do this thing for a client. But to actually go, oh, okay, I'm with my daughter now. I'm not going to take any action. I'm not going to control anything. I'm just going to sit here. Like, it takes a lot, even for me, who's conscious of that.
Yeah, it does take a lot, because there's a sense that if I'm not doing something, I'm not parenting, So a lot of what I talk about, especially with mums with under threes, is, that less equals more. If you sit back, you'll be able to do what you really should do. But whereas when you're thinking, you have to fix things and make things, get your child back to happy. And, we are like control freaks, really, in terms of wanting to make life perfect, instead of sitting back and going, I wonder if they can actually solve that problem without me saying anything. And that's why I love Montessori education. Really is about the adult realizing that that their role is not to do stuff to the child. It's to put the right environment there for the child so that they will take what they need from the environment to become who they need to be. And that is it's a mind shift. It's a dynamic mind shift, but realizing that this dynamic, and it really has helped me as a parent, especially, parenting teens and even adult children now, that this dynamic, that my role is really about more being observant of my child, my own children, as well as the children I educate, and seeing what is missing in the environment that I can help put into the environment that the child is naturally going to develop, because children naturally develop in an environment that's prepared for them. And so, if that's just such a change of thinking, that you can be objective enough to stand back and say, well, is it something in me that's hindering my child? Is it something because the environment isn't offering the right thing? Or is my child need glasses That's, you know what I mean? Like, because that's why they can't see the board. So it's always, it's not just the child. And instead of us thinking that we have to act on this child all the time and be there for this child all the time, is actually where we go wrong, I think, you know, in terms of, as you say, controlling them, having them as an extension of ourselves, instead of sitting back and going, this child is lent to me for this period of time where I have an awesome responsibility to give them, or, you know, be there for them, but not be there for them from them deciding how much they need of me rather than the other way around.
It's a real lesson in presence and patience, right? And I think one of the reasons, you know, I've noticed with myself when I go to a place of like, I need to control this, it's when I'm uncomfortable with how it affects me, or it brings up, like I noticed with my daughter, I could bring up a reflection of how I feel about the way I was raised. And that's what the challenge is for me. So if she's doing something, you know, I've a lot of respect for my mother. She was a single mother. You know, she raised two of us on her own. She worked, you know, and she grew up in Asia in a traditionally Indian, Sri Lankan culture, right? So very different from how I would grow. So I have a lot of empathy for her because she's had to really break away from, you know, she got locked in a room and wasn't allowed to talk to anyone when she got her period, right, because it's unclean. So this is a very different culture that she's come from. So I have a lot of patience for that. But there's still a part of me that's like, wow, I was treated so strictly, and, you know, so I don't want to do the same to my daughter. But when I find I'm in those moments of stress, I'm like, oh my God. But I think they're the moments of learning, right?
Yeah.
They're the moments of learning. So let's talk about these moments, because the first thing I learnt, which I wasn't expecting to learn from Montessori, was how we talk to our children in terms of praise. And it's an interesting thing, right, because now when I'm at the playground, I hear so many parents say, oh, good climbing, oh, good walking, good sharing, good. We've become so like, I don't want my child to think they're naughty, or, you know, we've gone the other way, and we don't want them to feel neglected, so I need to praise them all the time. But you taught me so many amazing things about praise and not praising and the implications of praise. So please, would you share with us about the good? And, you know, Josh talked about in his talk, you know, there's no such thing as a bad child, no bad child. Let's talk about this concept of good and bad and praise.
I suppose the whole good, bad thing comes from the punishment reward model, that we reward good behavior and we punish inappropriate, you know, call it bad behavior or behavior that we don't want to nurture, right?
Yeah.
But whenever we evaluate, something is not good or bad, they are they're worthy because they're a human being, you know, and we all succeed and fail. So we shouldn't be defined by our successes or our failures. We should be defined by how worthy we are as human beings, right? And so the good and bad, the praise thing, it seems to be ingrained in us to think of good behavior as good and bad behavior as bad. And the same with our emotions. Good feelings are good and bad feelings are bad. We have to get our children away from the bad feelings and have good feelings. But is that reality? No, we all have all feelings, right? Even they exist together in us. We can be angry about something, sad about something else, and really excited about the fact that we're going on holiday next week, you know, all at the same time. And so what is this obsession we have as parents where we think that as soon as my child's sad or mad or jealous, we have to get them back to, we have to fix it somehow. And I think so that is the first, I suppose, aha moments we have to have as a parent to even start doing it slightly differently, because it's a generation, even more so than my generation, and then even your generation, about this being hooked on praise and constant vigilance. You know, I've been speaking to mums. Almost every single person that came to my online workshop has monitors, not only in the child's bedroom, but anywhere where the child spends time, so that we can constantly watch them, so that we can constantly make sure they're okay, so that we can constantly prevent anything bad happening to them. And, I go, seriously, would you as an adult want to be watched while you sleep? Wouldn't you start doing funny things to perform for somebody if they were constantly checking on you?
Well, it's really interesting with the baby monitors, right? Because I've never had one, but we've actually got we're going to have a building biologist hopefully on the show, and one of her, she had to find something that emitted the most EMFs possible for her PhD paper, and the thing that she found more than a mobile phone was a baby monitor. So you don't want that thing in your
common knowledge. That's not common knowledge.
They emit the most EMF of all devices in your house. So you put that right next to your baby.
The thing is that babies are born, like, it's a misunderstanding, because human beings are born to make their needs known. They cry even as they come out. God, this world is very different from the world I just came from. What's going on?
Yeah, but then if you have a baby who sleeps all the time and who's quiet all the time, that's a good baby. People ask you, is she a good baby? I mean, what does that even mean?
Exactly. So we have these misconceptions right from the beginning, and all the sleep, I suppose, things that there are some really strict methods out there about, and then people, yes, as you say, are praised when their baby's sleeping through from 6 weeks or whatever, and then they say they've slept through from 6 weeks. Well, I doubt that there's any baby in the world that slept through from 6 weeks, because they teeth, they have uncomfortable tummies. I just don't think it's the whole truth. Like somebody said to me, who came to me for toileting help this last week, if one more mother says that they toileted their child in 3 days, I'm going to scream.
Yeah.
Because it's like the birth story. It becomes, you share what you want to remember, and you're very selective in that. You put on your own.
It becomes so, there's a lot of shame around that stuff, right? And this is the thing with good and bad. I mean, I remember even when I went to Mother's Group and I shared my birth story, and I had such an amazing birth, and the midwife in Mother's Group, she said, I wouldn't tell too many people that you loved your birth, and that, it was pain-free, this beautiful meditative hypno, all this sort of stuff. I wouldn't tell too many people that. So we've got good and bad, but we've got this.
You're not allowed to even be authentic in case it offends somebody.
Well, that's it. And isn't this what good and bad starts? It's. I mean, you taught me that when we let's just go through how, when a child does something, and this is the biggest thing that I've had to get over, was like not saying, good girl. This is what you taught me, what Montessori told me. It's not when your child finally learns to wash their hands and you've been banging your head against the wall with COVID every time you go outside, please wash your effing hands. When they finally walk into the house, wash their hands by themselves, come out, we don't say, oh, good girl, you washed your hands. It's just saying, oh, you washed your hands all by yourself. Yeah. And the difference in that, and can you explain this praise and why we do it that way? Because
So praise actually is evaluation, and when we are evaluated, we have to compare ourselves. So we are always praise, like a word good. If you're a good girl, you have to look outside there to see good compared to what, right? And it's the same with bad. So usually when we evaluate it, we actually are immediately comparing ourselves or looking for what that means, because what does good mean? What is a good, like if you be good in the supermarket, we can go for a treat. So now you've got so what does good mean? Not standing up once in the trolley, being silent so that mommy can get the things without being distracted. Like, what does it mean? There's no definition of what good actually means. It's based on how the adult's feeling that day and how much they can cope with, rather than, the rule is we sit in the trolley, because when you stand up and mommy's distracted, there's the possibility of falling out, or, so we don't give information. So helpful praise or encouragement describes rather than evaluates. So what you just shared about the bathroom story with washing hands, when you say you washed your hands, look how clean they are. I can even see them shining, right? For instance, and they smell so good. The child will say, I'm a good hand washer. So the self-praise follows the description. And when I praise myself, I'm intrinsically motivated.
Oh, so important.
Whereas when you praise me, I'm extrinsically motivated. I have to look to see if mommy's pleased with me, daddy's pleased with me, the teacher's pleased with me, and then that will define whether I'm a good person or a bad person. And what about all the things we miss that our children do? If they don't know how to self-evaluate, then they're not getting that positive feedback all the time that they are okay, because it's all dependent on the times when we are present enough to actually notice anything, and the fact, and this is what I, in the classroom, when I got parents to step back and not be constantly saying, good, wonderful, clever, beautiful, whatever, then they would step back so far back that they're not even noticing what the children are doing and describing it and giving the feedback that is helpful. Because we don't know how to do things, we're either doing too much or too little. We go, oh, okay, that means I'm just supposed to let them be, and so I'll just go on my phone for the next hour. So it's like we swing this pendulum instead of realizing that we can give really helpful feedback, but it doesn't have to be constant. It can be just, look, wow, you look really pleased with yourself about that. Looks like you like red. That picture's just got red, and more red. So it's such a subtle difference, isn't it? And yet I've seen babies who take a step for the first time and everything. When you say hard work, standing and falling and standing and falling and standing and falling, and you did that big step, all by yourself, you should see the pride with which their whole body.
Oh, you do. That's I love Shanti's face when she comes out and she's, I did it. Like putting on a T-shirt for her, putting on her jumpers and her T-shirt as her latest thing, she's been battling with it for such a long time. And I have to say, this is the part, right, where it's hard, because you're like, will you just bloody hurry up and get ready? And so the desire is to do it in a time frame that suits you, and it takes a lot to go, okay, so I know that getting dressed in the morning takes forever, and it's a real this is our sticking point at the moment, getting a T-shirt on by yourself. So my thing is, right, so what I have to do as a parent is make space for that to happen. So I have to be organised. So actually, while we've been doing this process, we're not choosing clothes ourselves. I get the clothes out and lay them out so she can come and put the hands in and do it. So we can just focus on that piece. But what it calls is that I have to be organised as a parent.
I have to give you a different method of how to put a T-shirt on, Leila, from just hearing what you said.
I can always learn more, hey. I can always learn more. And this is the thing, is that it's very frustrating, because you think, oh, now I'm doing this right, but I could do this better. And this is I think it's the part, right, where the ego steps in and you're like, well, I'm the adult and I should know how to do this better. And then the other part that steps in is like, well, can you just hurry them up, because we've got to get in the car and get to school and I need to be on time. So it's constantly self-evaluating what works for your family. How does this, and that's the challenging part, right? It's taking the time to set up the environment for the child because they constantly change as well, right? So,
oh my goodness.
So it's like, okay, well, now she can do this. So now I've got to move the dressing chair here in front of the mirror here, and, it's constantly going, is this actually working for her? Am I facilitating an environment where she can actually learn to get dressed herself? It's really interesting.
Often it's just what you've just said, is that we're not children. They need time, but they need to have observed the steps in the process. Because the way we put on a T-shirt is so fast. And just what you said about mirror neurons, I just start looking that up because that was a very interesting concept to me. But they do what we do, not what we say. So we'll say, slow down, look what you're doing, da, 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 da. But they watch us and we move at a very hectic speed. So especially when we dress, and when we dress them. And for however long we've been dressing them before we think, oh, they can dress themselves. Or I should, in Montessori you might be, as a Montessori parent, you introduce that from a lot younger. I mean, you meet people who are still dressing a 4 and 5-year-old and have never thought anything else of it because they're little and you dress them and you help them to dress and they don't show the skills that they've got it because you've been doing it so fast. But
this is also novel to me, right? Because in the world where we come from, it's all about protecting the child, right? So there's all these things to stop the child falling off the change table and you distract the child and you it's never what was really key for me in Montessori as well was learning that when a child is trying to climb off the change table or it's an opportunity for you to give them some kind of involvement. Yeah, change the environment and get them involved. Who would think that you could say to a 6-month-old baby, do you want to hold the wipe for me? Or do you want to, get them involved in what you're doing because that's actually laying the foundation for them to learn how to do it themselves.
Well, not only that, it develops their concentration skills because in order for you to do that, you have to slow down and hold the wipe until they take it without giving it to them. If you ask a question, you have to wait for a response. And most of us don't even do that, And questions are interesting because little children often don't respond to questions. They respond to choices much more than questions, right? Red T-shirt or blue T-shirt, they will make a choice. If you say, what T-shirt do you want to wear? Right?
I've been doing this with Shanti too. I pick out 2 outfits and I go, which one do you want to wear? Otherwise, if I say, what do you want to wear? We'll stand there in front of the cupboard for hours.
Not only that, you literally, as you said, there's a whole cupboard. And then if they choose the jumper, you're going to say, no, they can't wear it because it's hot outside. So, we give them, it has to be age appropriate, the choices, but they do have to develop, to choosing their own clothes. So that they get the sense of what is too warm to wear today. So, holding up to, if you do it from younger, by the time they're a certain age, they will have already the confidence to choose, especially if it's summer clothes that are available or it's winter clothes that are available. That will help them. How do children make good choices? By having lots of opportunity to make choices. And dressing is one of the first independences because what happens to old people when they can't dress themselves? They feel all their self-worth goes because now they're back to dependency on others. And dressing is also the learning to see your child as separate from you. And them seeing themselves as separate from you because they're going to, if you give them the time, they're going to maybe put on a T-shirt very differently from what you've shown them. And then you have to accept that that's the way they like to put on their T-shirt. Do you know what I mean? instead of dictating not only what should be done, but how it should be done and in what time frame it should be done. It's interesting with a T-shirt, though, because I know that your what you've been shown is the arms in something, right?
Mm.
Have you?
Yeah, put it flat down so she can
put your arms in first.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever put on a T-shirt like that?
Yeah, this is really interesting, right? Because I've been trying to do it, so
That's
I put it
the Montessori jacket.
Yeah, right.
Put on like that.
Yeah, she loves the jacket flip. Oh my God, you should see her on the step.
So, but we can't put on a T-shirt like that. When we lie down a T-shirt, you put it up, and the first thing you have to put is in your head.
Yeah.
So she's going to have much more success if you just change that one thing.
The head. Oh, thank you. I'm going to try that this morning.
So, and
you know what? She can do it herself now. It's really gorgeous. But I feel bad now. I've given her the hard way to do it.
I will have to give you the link to my toileting resources page where my 3-year-old grandson is dressing himself. We've got a video on there.
Oh, good. Well, this is the thing, right? So toileting, let's talk about toileting as well, because we sort of see these things, I think, as parents as like when you're 3, you have to go to school, so you should be able to go to the toilet. So we'll just stay in for the weekend that before you turn 3. We'll all stay home, and by the end of the weekend, you'll go to the toilet. And I think it's the same when parents are older, right? They think, oh, my child is 16 now, they should learn how to cook. Or my child is, 18, they should learn how to drive. But all these things actually take
skills before that.
Oh, masses of skills. But also building the foundations of these skills is actually quite, what's the word? It's a journey that sets you up for autonomy in a very profound way, yes. I think. So let's talk about that. And because I think, what I learned about this too, I'm talking about it, I guess, from the perspective of when I work with adults who have these issues with their body, like not liking their body, not thinking that functions of their body are disgusting. We're still in a world where people can't. I ask them, how are your bowel movements? And they're like, ugh, what are you asking me that for? And well, your bowels actually tell you about your diet, How's your period? Oh, I don't want to talk about periods. Well, your period actually tells you a lot about your physiological function. We're still icky about those things.
Yeah.
And we are still funny about our bodies. And also, we have adults who can't do things for themselves, that have issue taking responsibility, like cooking for themselves, or it's a really interesting, and I feel like from what I've learned from you, from Montessori, that this actually starts from 0 to 3, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, right, it's the unconscious learning period of our lives. So most of us as adults, have consciously, we can't remember what was done to us around toileting. But unconsciously, we're responding out of what's being done to us in all manner of things, right? And toileting, the ability to take care of your own physical needs in a bathroom is one of the big milestones, which I believe from working with children this long and knowing historically, how early toileting is possible for them to do themselves, that is hindering this ability to separate and this emotional dependence that we're seeing in the 3 to 6 age group, because this issue of looking after their own body functions hasn't been totally resolved by the time they're heading off out of the home environment and spending more and more time. Like by the time they're 3, they're spending 3 to 6 hours away from you, most children. So if they are not autonomous in terms of being able to go to the toilet, being able to self-regulate, being able to actually read the signs that their body needs to do this, that means everything is affected, because we all know how hard it is when a toilet isn't available as an adult. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not confident to go to a toilet or to ask an adult to assist you with what you can't do independently for yourself yet, then you are holding on to body function, and that is becoming a learned pattern of behavior right from little, right? That there's something wrong with me, or there's something, by the time a child's 3, they're also aware of other children and what they can do and what you can't do. So it starts to have social impacts, whereas an 18-month-old who's learning to go to the toilet, nobody's looking at them. They don't, nobody's saying you should be able to do this or you shouldn't be able to do that. And so they are learning more at the right time. It's like language. I say to parents, well, did you just start talking to your child at 2 and expect them to have language? We start talking to our child from birth, trusting that by the time they're 2, that will become an explosion of language, right? And yet we do nothing about toileting and expect them to have all these scaffolding skills and self-confidence to just do it in the 3 days without any self-knowledge. And disposable nappies have certainly complicated the issue because they've made it too easy for parents not to pay attention for a long time, and then they don't deal very well with the mess that toileting can produce. And so they are not prepared. The biggest thing with the toileting is I'm talking to the parents about preparing themselves for something that's a normal stage of development that they have to pay attention to. They can't, they think training pants train their child. Like, what have pants got to do with training children? You see, I mean, the actual whole media thing about, pull-ups, pull-ups train your child, change them from that kind of diaper to one that pull-ups are the hardest things to get on for a child. They can't get them on their own.
Ridiculous.
So, so all of those things, it's really tough because dressing, like you said, gives them a lot of self-confidence, the ability to dress and undress. And a child is very capable of dressing themselves before 18 months if they've had enough practice. And it's something that I've seen boosts their autonomy and independence, and I can do it. There's nothing like dressing, So the collaborative dressing, as you said, as soon as they're fighting on a change table, they are voicing a need for change as loudly as possible, and it's up to the parent to change the environment. The child can't change the environment. They will adapt to whatever environment the parent gives them. So, I've watched a mother dress a 9-year-old after a swimming lesson at the swimming pool, and he literally was like a rag doll. So, and then you think, well, what kind of adult? We must always be thinking, what kind of adult would this make this child in what I'm doing for them right now?
Well, that's key, isn't it? Because we think of it so much as, giving them academic success or financial success, and that will make them the adult. And whereas it's really about teaching them the values and teaching them to self-regulate, which is what people have the most issues with when they come to see me, is self-regulation, listening to yourself, self-worth, self-reflection, looking at your own emotions, stopping to think about how I feel about something, being able to hang out with myself by myself, being able to achieve something for my own desire, not for, the recognition of the world, the universe. And, the huge one, like you're talking about, is self-comparison, like always comparing myself to everyone else in the world for a barometer of where I'm at in my life. And these are all the things I think that really undo us as adults.
Yeah, there are. And, we haven't really touched on the whole thing of emotions, which, we want to not accept emotions instead of realizing that by accepting them, by naming them, we don't agree with them. We're just accepting them, and accepted emotions actually diminish. Whereas when you deny emotions and say, stop crying, or, oh, you're okay when a child falls down, that we're actually stopping the very mechanism that helps people be what you are talking about, self-regulating. Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify, access, and control your own emotions, and to, I've got it written up here, recognize, understand, and consider the emotions of others. So if you don't know what emotions you're feeling, how do you access them? How do you identify emotions that you've never named, that nobody's ever named for you? Like, I talk a lot about jealousy and anger as the emotions parents don't want to name. It's stop being angry. Tantrums are bad, right? Yet everyone has them.
Yeah, adults have them.
They just learn to disguise them in different ways, right? And so we're trying to always stop emotions instead of just the understanding that emotions accept or diminish, and that all behavior is preceded by emotion. All behavior. Child psychology would tell you that all behavior is preceded by emotion. So if we can tune into the emotions of our children and accept them and only put a limit on actions, because we all need to control our emotions, right? You can't live in a world where you just let your emotions hang out wherever you are, because they affect other people. But if you can't identify them and access them, you can't learn to control them.
No, exactly right.
If you're told to push them down every time you're angry, and boys, especially in generations previously, you're not allowed to be angry. Instead of saying, anger is a legitimate emotion, as legitimate an emotion as happiness, because it wouldn't be viable for us to be not angry if somebody did something really bad to us, if we were just like, it wouldn't be authentic.
Well, that's the thing people don't need to understand about emotion as well, is that, anger is a very healthy emotion for setting boundaries. And people who can't access their anger often have issues with boundaries and protecting themselves, standing up for themselves. And, so if we don't allow our children to be angry, let's talk about that, how we actually help a child access that, because that was a real important thing that you taught me.
Okay, so, I think anger, the thing with emotions is that they just happen, right? As a response to something that's been done to us. Sometimes it's a violation of our boundaries, but sometimes it's just something that we want that somebody else isn't letting us have, right? But, by allowing them the anger, we allow them to learn to control it. But by stopping the emotion, it usually gets worse and worse and worse, doesn't it? The more we try and interact with a child having a tantrum, usually the tantrum ends up in us both having a tantrum. Think of it. The worst tantrum that you've ever seen in a shopping center, at the end, who's tantruming? Because we haven't just allowed the feelings to exist without us wanting to control and stop and fix. And as a result, our own anger boils over the top, or we say yes to our children over and over again when we really should have said no. And now we can't control our own emotion. So allowing emotion to just exist and then letting them feel it for as long as they have to feel it is probably where I would start with the negative feelings. Jealousy is another big one that exists, right from the start. As soon as if we only have one child, they're jealous of us having conversations. They're jealous of our friends. I'll never forget how my granddaughter's little face used to, every time she used to spend time with me and I used to be with my adult friends, she would stand beside me like, I don't like that lady, Granny. I don't like that lady. You get so jealous when I'm talking to my friends and I'm not paying you all the attention, don't you? And then she would just smile,
Yeah.
But, like if you just said, don't be like that. Don't be nasty about my friends. Don't do this. Don't do that. What happens to
me
emotion? What happens to, and it is embarrassing if your friend's standing right there and your grandchild's going, don't talk to her, It is embarrassing, and we usually act out of our emotions instead of responding to what's necessary, which is just an acceptance of none of us like to not be the center of attention, right? And so jealousy is a normal emotion that's legitimate in that instant. It doesn't make the child bad to be jealous.
But it is that acknowledgement, right? Stopping and asking, why is my child behaving like that? Rather than, oh, that's not appropriate, so I'm going to stop you from doing that.
Well, the why often isn't helpful because, could you answer if I say, why are you happy about this, mad about that?
Oh, true. So true.
Okay, so that is the thing that parents ask. If I'm asked why, if you get angry and your husband says, why are you angry? Why did that make you angry?
And you're like, I hate that.
No, that is, you get angrier.
Yeah.
You're not accepted.
So true.
And yet when we think that, why is going to fix the bad feelings? Well, why is just because. The answer is because.
Yeah. Oh, I'm still so stuck in my adult
How can you explain because? I mean, why were you embarrassed when the guy cut you off and swore at you? Why were you embarrassed? I mean, I was just embarrassed, I guess.
Yeah, or, can I lie down on your couch in 2 hours and we'll try and dissect it together, like therapy, So true. I didn't even think of that. But I think
so this is the mistaken thing because of our belief about feelings.
Yeah.
And instead of they just are, and what we need to limit is the actions we take with our feelings. So I can be angry at you, but I have to find a way to tell you about that anger without attacking you, and because the anger is mine to take responsibility for. It's not because of you.
Yeah.
And this is the whole thing, is we blamed other people for our emotions. So somehow we have to fix them and then we won't have these emotions.
Yeah.
And yet the thing is, I have to take personal responsibility for what makes me angry is different from what makes you angry. And, so it all starts with personal responsibility. And if I take personal responsibility for my feelings, it will follow that I take personal responsibility for my actions.
Mm-hmm. So true. So I think, when we go back to mirror neurons, it talks about, this is where we have to do it ourselves, right? I think I was telling you the story. Someone stole our pram off our front doorstep and I was ropeable. I was like, anyway, it's my fault for leaving it out there. But I didn't notice for a week that someone stole it. I thought the nanny had taken it. I thought, I was like, where's this pram? I didn't realise. Then I had to use this, I didn't want to buy another pram. I thought my daughter's too old. I'm not spending money on another pram. So I got this secondhand, I don't know, terrible, cheap stroller, and I couldn't open it. And one morning we were running late and I couldn't open it and I was so angry. And Shanti's standing there watching me. And, this has been a key thing for me as a parent, just to learn to voice myself when I'm going through something and explain myself so she can understand, rather than just, so I've got this pram and I really just wanted to throw it on the footpath. And instead I put it down and I said, oh my God, I'm so angry. And Shanti said to me, why are you angry, Mummy? I said, somebody stole our pram and now I have to use this one and I can't use it. I can't open it. I'm so frustrated because I can't open it. And she says to me, I think she must have just turned 2. She said to me, Mummy, oh, come here. I'll cuddle you. I'll cuddle you. Now sit down. Take a deep breath. Then we open it together, she said.
And this is the power of accepted emotion. People cannot respond when they feel, when we accept feelings, people can think. It's the same with you can't reason with an emotional person. Even us, we can't be reasoned with when we in the height of emotion. The emotions have to recede for us to be able to think clearly, So when you understand that that's okay, listen, I can't talk right now, I'll scream at you if I talk right now. So can I be left alone until I'm ready to talk in my normal voice? Is a very healthy way to show children how to regulate their emotions. The fact that you didn't scream, like the fact that you used your body to express your emotion rather than, attacking the people that stole the pram, right? How can there be such bad people in the world? Now they've made me so angry. I've got to do this and I've got to do that because of, instead of the fact is I have no pram. I haven't got the pram that I really love. I've got this other pram and now I'm feeling this. It's the very different. It's the reason why she could show empathy was because you were authentically expressing emotion and that's what you were doing. That's all you were doing, and you were doing it. What I say, you have to match the emotion of your children. You weren't going, I'm so angry. You know what I mean? You were expressing the emotion to the degree that you were experiencing the emotion. And the key is without attacking character. And you didn't attack anybody. You just expressed your emotion. And you didn't blame anybody else for your emotion. And that is what you said, how do we get children to take responsibilities for their bodies and their relationships, is by being authentic ourselves, is by modeling what we want. You can't teach children. They're going to be doing what you do. They're going to be handling it the way you handle it. They're observing people all around them. So they're not only going to be watching us, they're going to be watching both of us, and they're going to be watching how we talk to our friends and how we talk about our friends when they're not there. So they develop their masks from the way we are, this way with these people and that way with those people. Instead of, I think, I always think of the way mums talk about other women, and then realize that, this is what your daughters are watching, how they, if we are comparing our bodies always to other people's women, what are our girls going to be doing?
Oh, it's terrible. This is something that's really, I hope all the women listening here, because we're so terrible. And I've really been conscious since I've had Shanti, because I'm really not happy with the way I look, because I've had an autoimmune disease and I put on 35 kilos, and I have to be so careful not to make a reference. I want to use the F word. I really want to use the F word, F-A-T, and I'm really conscious of not saying that in front of her or comparing myself to her. But then at the same time, it's still a real emotion, right? Saying, I don't feel good about myself because I wanted to wear this today and I can't wear it. But, it's still important to voice those emotions.
About that, because remember, we all have habits, that have developed through our life of what we haven't taken personal responsibility for. And health and fitness are those two things that we all know what we have to do to get the result we want. But that translated into actually the actions is difficult for every human on the earth. It's only through, and I know I've taken the last year to lose, not even a lot of weight. And it takes a lot of conscious effort to change your habits and behaviors and to make things that you really want a priority until you get to the result you want for yourself, not based on anybody else. Because, sometimes you avoid doing it because somebody says, oh, but, you look good. And then so you go, even though I don't really, or I want to be fitter, I don't take those actions because everybody else accepts me the way I am. So we should be, I don't think we need to hide that part of ourselves that gets frustrated and angry with ourselves, because, as you said, anger and frustration are actually, the biggest motivators of change.
Mm.
It's when we get to that point where I really don't want to be unfit anymore. I really don't, for me at the moment, I really don't want to have high glucose levels, because it will start telling on my, at the moment, I'm not having the ill effects of high blood glucose levels as a type 1 diabetic. But in 10 years' time, what I'm doing to my body now will have the impact as I get older. So I have to take responsibility for that now if I want a different outcome in 10 years' time, And so you have to get to the point where you stop denying, things will just stay as they are if I don't do anything, because that's not the truth, right?
So this is that place of being honest about your feelings.
Yeah, and being honest. And and it's not compared to anybody. It's just compared to what kind of, it's the personal responsibility thing again. So you can say, this happened to me and I picked up weight and I did this and I did that. And now I have to turn that around by making different choices, or different, because it's them watching us go through those struggles. You hear of people that never saw their parents fight, for instance.
Oh, I've had some of those people in my coaching, and they actually cannot have relationship because they think their parents are so perfect. How am I ever going to have a relationship that's as perfect as my parents? It's like, well, they thought they just did it with the door closed,
Or they, maybe they did get on easy. We should be able to be authentic. If we blow it, then we need to apologize. But if the blow up happened in front of the children, we shouldn't be apologizing in secret, because then they don't see both sides of it, do they?
So important.
Yeah, and I mean, so I grew up, Adrian and I, he grew up he had never seen his parents argue. And I grew up with 5 children, and my mom and dad argued continually. So as a result, for him, a raised voice was something is majorly wrong in the world. If you raise your voice at me, then I'm really bad, and so it's really interesting, because neither is right? Neither hiding all your emotions under the carpet or just expressing them without care of the other people around you are on either side of the spectrum. We blame, everyone else was, if my dad didn't drink, then this wouldn't happen. If mom didn't shout at dad, then he wouldn't have done that. So we had this whole thing of, everybody, something's the reason why we lose our control, instead of the sense of learning how to regulate our emotions by watching healthy models of doing so.
And this is also where setting limits comes in, right? Because this is the thing, the big learning for me, and the big thing I engaged you to help Sean and I was this thing of, well, we want our children to be who they are, and we want to give them freedom and space and all this sort of stuff. But where do you step in and draw the limit? Because, you can't, it's not even about control. I mean, it is and it isn't, but the thing is that you're still meant to teach them to self-regulate. So it's not, today I don't feel like this, so I'm not doing it. Well, sometimes life happens and you just have to do stuff that you don't want to do, and also the issue of not yelling at children. I mean, children go through phases, right, where they just rebel against everything that you say. And if you're not putting the limit in, what kind of adult, like you said, are they going to be if they don't understand there's limits in the world and consequence? So let's talk about, because I think people have this perception of Montessori that it's just this free space and, there's no rules and no regulations. And then other people think there's so many rules, I can't deal with Montessori.
Well,
How do we set limits?
Yeah, it's one of the, I suppose, foundational principles of life that for every freedom, we have to know, in order to truly be free, we have to know where the boundary is. Because freedom without responsibility is chaos. So freedom and limits, or freedom and limits lead to self-discipline. You have to have to know where a line is to choose not to go over it. If there's no line, then you're a law unto yourself, and you cannot cope in a world, because the world requires that we live within the laws and boundaries that work for others, because your freedom can't impinge on another person's freedom.
And your actions can't affect them.
And we're seeing this in the world at the moment with COVID, where adults are throwing tantrums about losing their freedoms, but not really realizing that your freedom has to be in relationship to others.
Exactly.
We're not just free to do what we like because our freedoms impinge on other people.
And so important to treat the children right. Like, I'm trying to help Shanti with her anger, so she gets quite angry, frustrated when she can't do something. At the moment, it's the Lego, right? And the Lego, she's just got it for her birthday. She can't put it together. She gets so angry and she throws it across the room.
Okay.
So I've said to her, okay, I can see that you're angry, but it's not okay to throw things. If you need to get out your anger, you can punch this pillow right here. So then the anger it's your anger. You can go through your anger, but you can't do it in a way that affects anybody else. So here is the pillow, punch the pillow.
Yeah. So that is one of the key skills about emotion, is to give children creative outlets for it. So, and it can be any manner of things. Sometimes they'll get over you offering them only one kind of option, So we have to, that's why it has to be creative, because the one time a pillow will suffice, but at other times we might have to go and kick a ball against a wall as hard as we can, or we might have to tear up paper or scribble, or, and I think so the more creative and the more varied our offers of creative outlets, as long as you say, they're acting on an object which can't hurt anybody else, So, yes, you can be angry with mummy because I'm feeding the baby right now, but my leg is not for kicking.
Yeah. And your little sibling is not for bashing, yeah.
Yeah. And, I've dealt with quite a few that, the baby is getting hurt by the older sibling. And then again, they made bad and wrong for hurting, instead of the jealousy and the anger, which is absolutely normal, being acknowledged and giving voice to the feelings means that a child knows those feelings and therefore can then take personal responsibility for them. But if you're told they're bad and wrong, then all you think about is I'm bad and wrong, and when we're angry, we think we're bad and wrong, so we don't take personal responsibility for it. We blame others for it. Instead of going, well, I have this anger issue that, it boils up for whatever reason because I grew up not being allowed to play. But now I've got to take personal responsibility for it. No matter where we are, we have to take, we all do inappropriate things when we're angry usually, and so we've got to find other ways to express the emotions that don't hurt others.
And also to learn about other people, right? Like Sean and I got you on the phone when COVID started because we were losing our minds, and everybody else in the world who's been stuck in isolation with their child, I'm sure, can resonate with this. And what was really helpful was when we called you, we talked about setting up spaces in the house. So because all of a sudden we're stuck together, and it's not okay to just give up to the child's behaviour and what the child wants and everything. what we set up in the house was one room is the quiet room and the other room is the playroom and the loud room and the express yourself room. So when Mummy and Daddy are sitting in this room and reading, this is the quiet room. And if you don't want to be quiet, that's okay. You can go in the other room and do your dancing, your shouting, your playing, whatever it is. But when Mummy and Daddy sit here, it's the quiet room. Because I think the other thing as parents is we think that we can't actually have anything of our own personal space, our own personal time. And then I feel like when I do that, I'm going to end up martyring like the generation above me, right? All women just martyred themselves for their children, the detriment of themselves. And so this was fundamental to me, that we can, the way you teach people to set limits for self-preservation, self-love, like it's amazing. And Ashanti goes in that room, she calls it the quiet room. But mark my words, if you make noise in that room, she will tell you, Mummy, this is the quiet room.
Well, it's such a powerful tool to be. Well, healthy boundaries are not something we're born with; we have to develop. And through trial and error, most of us come to a point of crisis about lack of healthy boundaries before we actually do anything about it, which is unfortunate, right? Because we all have people in our lives that have been able to, for whatever reason, make us say yes, even when we wanted to say no. And that's where they start eroding. Our boundaries erode whenever we're not authentic to the inner self. So, and we do that to our children as well. Our 3-year-old says, you say, give me a hug. And I don't want to. Oh, you're making me sad. How often do you hear parents say, you're making me sad, when a child says, I don't want to hug you?
So much, so often.
Right? So whereas, that is then already teaching our children that don't be authentic to yourself. Do what other people are asking you to do, and then you accept it. Right?
But we feel embarrassed about that stuff too, right? Like I've had to learn with Shanti, if we go somewhere and she doesn't want to say hello to everyone, I was like, well, she just came in the room. She doesn't know you guys. She'll say hello when she's ready. Whereas a lot of parents would feel, oh my, no, we just got here. You have to say hello to everyone. Give auntie a hug,
Well, again, children are quite perceptive about people. And when we force things like, and the thing is, a lot of the not saying hello is because suddenly 10 adults are looking at you, expecting you to do something. Has she got a good-mannered child? Hasn't she got a good-mannered child?
Yeah.
And then we are, as you say, we are embarrassed. So then we kind of force the issue. And then not only the relationship with the people is affected, but now with our child who, it's a dizzy spiral, right?
Or we give them a label. Oh, your child is shy. No, actually. And then it forces a concept on a child.
Right? Label actually reinforces behavior. Good and bad is not usually helpful. Even good labels aren't really helpful to children. The last week of the parenting course, the communication skills course, is the roles we cast them in. That's the title of the session. And it's the one that, as parents, we struggle with the most, that we actually, you start with saying that you start the conversation with, what roles were you cast in as a child? And it's very interesting, when you do the course and these people say, well, I was cast as the beautiful one or the clever one. So even positive roles can be very limiting, because if you're the beautiful one, what happens if you have a car accident and you get a scar on your face? At what point things happen to us. And, if you're the clever one, what happens when you fail your maths exam? How do you feel about yourself the minute you don't meet up to that role that you've been casted. If you're the athletic one and now suddenly you can't play that sport because you've got a bad knee, do you know what I mean? Or whatever. So it's the one that you have to grapple with the most, that, you know, we say things quite flippantly, like our child's the shy one, or our child's the sporty one, or our child's the this one or the that one. And they limit a child. If you're creative, but not sporty, you know, what motivates you to go and be part of a team sometime? You know, because we actually live out what people expect of us as well. And so, you know, the roles that we just flippantly put out there. You know, we call children a little monkey, and then people ask, well, why does he climb on everything? We've been calling him a monkey for the year, and he's just living it out, you know.
It's so true. It is so true. We don't realise what we say and how, you know, words are so powerful. They are so, so, so powerful, and it's a big thing of mine that I always reiterate. Words are so powerful, the way we use them as adults to each other, and especially the way we are with our children, because they're so literal. You know, I'll never forget when I was a child that a teacher, I have such a problem with art, and Shanti's actually been helping me with my art. And what you taught me about sitting and observing and working with her is helping me. Because when I was a child, I was always told in art class what I was doing was wrong. And so I just have this, I can feel like my whole body, all my hair stand on end when I have to do art. So, but art is a very therapeutic thing to do. So I've been trying to sit with Shanti and just
be creative.
Scribble and put your hand on the paper and see where it goes, and understanding this concept of a child and how they see art. You know, it's about texture, it's about colour, it's about movement, it's about coordination, it's about all these things, you know, and so
not about the result.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to say with this story is that parenting to me is a call to action to deal with yourself. It's a spiritual quest, because your child copies everything that you do. They react to everything that you do, and they're a product of the way you talk to them, the way you treat them. And so this has been really key for me with the art, is just to sit there with her and scribble and not say, oh, you know, it's so hard, right, to go, oh, let's draw a tree. Like, oh, let's draw a star. Like, why do you have to draw a specific object? You know, or name the thing, or what is that? What are you drawing? They're not drawing anything. It's just a blue line or a grey squiggle or a yellow dot. It's not a thing, you know. It's having a child to me is a practice in presence and giving up of the ego. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like, you guys, if you know, I've called on Fern's help many times. I've had to go into another room and scream many times. You know, I'm still learning, but I think this is the key thing for me, that parenting is a call to action for yourself to be a better person. So I guess I wanted to wrap it up there, because I feel like Fern and I could just talk forever and ever, and you guys have got other things to do, because, you know, there's a couple of things I want to talk about we haven't talked about, and that was food, because that's a massive problem with a lot of families, getting their kids to eat. But and more advice on how do we talk to our kids. So what I want to encourage you guys to do is to look up at Fern's website, independentchild.com, and have a look online, because Fern's running a lot of online workshops now. And
the How to Talk one is coming up.
Yes. And Fern, so obviously she's a Montessori trained educator, but she's not Montessori focused. So you don't have to send your children to Montessori to work with her. You don't have to believe in Montessori. You don't have to read Montessori. She's actually just teaching you how to be a great parent, no matter what your philosophy is. And also, what was I going to say? I think this is something really great now that Fern's doing all these online courses, especially when there's still a lot of places in the world that are in lockdown, homeschooling, stuck with your kids. You know, it's intense. And I think for me, what COVID was a chance to even step up higher to the plate. Like, okay, now all of a sudden, Shanti, we're all clashing in this house because we're all three extremely independent personalities, and COVID for us was a real challenge. And so Sean and I were like, well, we're going to step up to the challenge here and become better parents. And we don't know how to do that. So we called Ferne. She's on speed dial.
I suppose I'll leave you with this thought, everyone, that, parenting is a journey and it's a long haul. It doesn't, you don't stop being a parent when your children are adults. You have to navigate your relationships through the whole process. And I don't think we were ever meant to do the parenting journey on our own. The extended family is all but diminished, and most of us don't have aunties or mums or whatever that we are close to. So we do need to find like-minded people to walk alongside us on this journey. And we all hit crises as parents. I'm doing what I do because of my own crises and my own parenting journey. And, I want to help parents, prevent those pitfalls. And there's nothing like children to grow you up, as Layla was saying, that it is a call to action, that you spend time on the important things. Relationships are all we have in the end, and navigating them we require more skill than most of us have to navigate relationships healthily. So we need to draw on the expertise and experiences of others along the way, and not see it as something that's wrong with us when we do need help from others. I certainly am very grateful for the people that have, I've reached out to in my parenting journey that have helped me through the challenges, and I'm all the stronger for it. So I think that's the key for us as parents, is to find those people.
And I think even more so important too, because like you said, we're not connected with our family anymore, but we don't necessarily share the same values as our family and parenting as well. And so that can cause a lot of friction and, different. So I think it is important to seek the people that you align with on that sort of thing.
Well, I think it's just too hard to reach out to our family members as well, often, because of all the history. There's probably a lot we can learn from everyone in our families as well, but it's too emotionally charged sometimes. So the objectivity of an outsider means, that we can take the action steps easier. I think
it's a big part of us. I think our evolution as human beings is learning to ask for help. And how can you have a child that asks for help if you can't ask for help yourself?
Yeah, and that's true independence, knowing when to do it alone and when to get others alongside you. That is true. True independence is the ability to be interdependent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we have relationship. That's how we connect with each other. We weren't meant to do this alone.
No.
So Ferne is running online workshops. She has people doing them from all over the world. So you can contact Ferne. Now, so Ferne's in a different state to me. Ferne and I have actually never worked together in person. She consults us over Skype or Zoom or whatever. So you can have her in your home doing parenting consultations. I found it really helpful for us, because we've come from different parenting backgrounds as well. So in those heightened moments where all three of you are really, you're not on the same page, and that's really important. So it's really good to have a third party to come in. And she said, well, Sean, you're doing this, but Leela, you're actually doing this. So how about we find a common path and agree as well on the terms, children sense the division. Like a dirty rat.
That's the whole workshop in itself.
I know, right? But it's a chance. Like, I think our relationship, from working with you, mine and Sean's relationship has gone to the next level, because parenting is a team sport. It's not dads go to work and mums stay home and do the parenting, and and that never worked anyway, really. That never worked anyway. Absent fathers and helicopter mothers. So have a look at Fern's website. Please tell us about your upcoming workshops, Fern, and I will also put them all in the show notes so you guys can go straight there and book in for things and try for things and all that. Your website is theindependentchild.com.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, Fern. I hope everyone enjoys this. I hope this also gets people out of listening to the other podcast going, oh, shit, I've totally up my child. No, you haven't.
No, you haven't. They're more resilient than you think.
That's right. And I hope for those listening who don't have children yet, this gives you some insight into why you might do some things that you do, but also motivates you to do some of this work before you have children. Hey, it would be a lot easier to do it before.
Oh, dear.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for joining us. And yes, I hope everyone goes and checks out your courses coming up online. I'm Leila Lutz, and you've been listening to The Body Never Lies. If you haven't yet, please go to your favourite podcast app and subscribe, rate and review this podcast. All the resources and references from this episode are waiting for you on my website, leilalutz.com. Just click on podcast and look for this episode. Now join me next week for another episode of The Body Never Lies. Thank you so much for listening.